Hartley carefully stacked the final project briefs, tapping the edges into a pristine line on her expansive mahogany desk. A faint, satisfied smile touched her lips. The view from her 28th floor office, overlooking the sparkling glass towers of the city, felt like a constant affirmation of her journey. For 3 years, Aether Dynamics had been more than just a place of employment. It was a professional fortress, a sanctuary meticulously constructed to keep the shadows of her past at bay. As a senior project manager, Clara excelled. The firm, a global leader in sustainable energy solutions, demanded perfection, and she delivered it with focused precision. The success of the company was inextricably linked to the singular force at its helm, Elias Vance. Elias Vance. The CEO was an enigma draped in the finest Italian wool. Tall, with an intimidating grace and eyes the color of a winter storm, he possessed an almost unnerving intelligence. He was the definition of an untouchable professional. His entire focus, it was universally understood, was solely on billion-dollar deals and clean energy patents. Gossip in the corporate world, however, always finds a foothold. The prevailing office narrative painted Elias as either completely asexual or so devoted to his work he had no time for human connection. This perception, however unfairly formed, was the key to Clara's peace. The total absence of any hint of personal interest from her powerful male boss had been the unshakable foundation of her emotional recovery. She could simply exist as a capable professional, respected for her mind, and nothing else. This sense of safety was priceless, purchased at the cost of years of fear. 3 years prior, her life had been a constant tightrope walk. She had been working at a smaller venture capital firm under Owen Kincaid. Owen was her first serious corporate mentor, a man who had initially fostered her talent, only to gradually shift the dynamic into something insidious and controlling. It began with overly familiar compliments escalating to possessive texts, and eventually, public demeaning outbursts whenever she spoke to another male colleague. The final straw was a late-night incident in the archives room. Owen cornered her, his face a mask of wounded entitlement. "I built you up, Clara. You owe me this," he had sneered, blocking the door. She had escaped, heart hammering against her ribs. Fleeing that company and that city overnight, leaving behind the wreckage of a promising career and a shattered sense of self. The psychological scars were deep, manifesting as a constant low-level vigilance and a profound fear of any man in a supervisory role. The stability of Aether Dynamics had slowly allowed those scars to fade into faint lines, until one Tuesday afternoon, her work phone buzzed with a scheduled meeting notification. A key partnership discussion was slated for the following week. She scanned the attendees: Elias Vance, head of legal, head of finance, and 3 names from the visiting firm, Apex Strategies. The third name hit her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs and turning the spacious office suddenly claustrophobic. Owen Kincaid, senior partner. It couldn't be a coincidence. He was back, trying to worm his way into her sanctuary. She slammed the laptop shut, the metallic sound echoing the panicked clang inside her chest. Her fortress had been breached. For the next 72 hours, Clara existed in a fog of hyper-awareness. She meticulously planned routes around the executive floor, timed her lunch breaks, and scheduled all meetings outside the headquarters, desperately trying to construct a temporary shield. Avoidance was her only strategy. She couldn't afford to be seen. If Owen saw her, he would know the fear was still there, and that knowledge was the power he craved. The day of the meeting arrived, thick with a sense of impending doom. At 2 p.m., Elias's assistant, a perpetually calm woman named Vivian, called. "Mr. Vance needs the final energy projection models in the main conference room immediately, Clara. He wants to review them with the Apex team." There was no escaping it. Clara felt her muscles tense, the familiar adrenaline rush of panic beginning to flood her system. She clutched the heavy binder to her chest like a shield. She would walk in, place the binder down, and walk out. No eye contact, no speaking. She could be a ghost. As she approached the executive wing, She could see the Apex team through the frosted glass of the main conference room. Owen Kincaid was seated closest to the window, leaning back in his chair with an air of casual ownership that made her stomach turn. He hadn't changed. The same overly confident smirk, the same predatory gleam in his eyes as he dominated the conversation. Taking a deep breath, Clara used the small back service entrance typically used by catering. Aiming to place the reports on the side credenza, the plan failed almost immediately. She moved quickly, silently laying the binder down. Just as she turned to leave, Elias's voice cut through the professional din, sharp and appreciative. "Thank you for these, Clara. They're exactly what we needed." Her cover was blown. She froze, wishing the thick carpet could swallow her whole. "Clara Hartley. Is that you?" Owen's voice, smooth and deceptively friendly, sliced into the silence. She didn't turn, didn't acknowledge the sound, just walked faster, pushing through the service door and practically sprinting down the hall back to her office. The moment she was inside, she locked the door and slid down the smooth wooden surface, burying her face in her hands, heart racing a frantic tattoo against her ribs. She spent the next hour trying to regulate her breathing. The knock on her door, followed by a text alert, startled her back to full panic. It was a message from an unknown number. "Fancy running into you, Clara. You still look stunning. We should catch up. Don't block me this time. I'll find you." Owen had her number again. He hadn't even been in the office for 2 hours, and he had already breached her defenses. The simple act of blocking the number felt hollow. Her sanctuary was invaded. Her hard-won sense of control had frayed, leaving her exposed and vulnerable to the ghosts she had worked so hard to bury. She looked around the elegant, safe confines of her office, and for the first time in 3 years, it felt like a trap. The evening couldn't come soon enough. The annual Aether Dynamics Summer Gala was held on the company's rooftop garden, an oasis of light, music, and meticulously curated foliage high above the city's noise. Clara wore a simple, elegant emerald dress and clung to the periphery, using a hedge of manicured lavender as her own personal anchor. She was supposed to be celebrating, but she felt like an exposed nerve. The thought of Owen seeing her was a constant icy weight. Her friend Sarah, from corporate communications, was busy discussing a new launch across the garden. Elias Vance, radiating an aura of solitary power, was stationed near the cocktail bar speaking with the board members, his custom-tailored suit looking impossibly sharp under the twilight glow. Just as she was contemplating a strategic retreat to the elevator, the sight that made her blood run cold materialized. Stepping off the elevator, talking animatedly to a junior sales associate who had clearly invited him as a guest, was Owen Kincaid. He was not supposed to be here. This was an internal event. The sight of him made the elegant garden feel like a suffocating cage. His eyes, scanning the crowd with an alarming proprietary focus, suddenly locked onto her. He didn't even pause. His predatory smile widened, and he began to move, navigating the mingling groups with a deliberate, direct path toward her panic. Pure and untainted, seized Clara. There was no escape. Sarah was too far. The exit was blocked by a crowd. Her eyes darted frantically, searching for any possible shield, any object, any person to place between herself and the man who embodied her nightmares. Her gaze landed on Elias Vance. For a fleeting moment, the CEO was alone, the board members having moved on to the buffet. He was checking a notification on his phone, momentarily disconnected from the world. In that split second, driven not by logic, but by a desperate, primordial instinct for self-preservation, Clara made a choice that defied every professional boundary, every rule of corporate decorum. In every principle of her hard-won emotional safety, she moved. Crossing the 20 feet that separated them in a blur of motion, fueled by adrenaline, Elias looked up, his storm-gray eyes registering the speed and intensity of her approach. A flicker of surprise, then immediate focused alertness crossing his features. Before he could utter a word, before she could even second-guess the insanity of her action, Clara was there. She swung her legs up, and with a desperate, clumsy grace sat down squarely in his lap. Elias Vance froze. The glass in his hand remained perfectly still. His body went rigid, an entire sculpture of shock. She could feel the heat radiating off him, the immediate, rapid acceleration of his heart against her back, and the sharp intake of his breath that hissed past his lips. "Please," she whispered into the expensive fabric of his shoulder. Her voice, strained and raw with fear, meant only for him. "Just pretend this is normal, please." Then a shift. She felt the subtle, powerful movement of his muscles as he processed the situation. His eyes, cold and sharp, darted past her face, locking onto a point about 10 feet away. Owen Kincaid, who had stopped dead in his tracks, was staring, his smug expression replaced by a look of stunned, ugly confusion. The tension emanating from Elias was not confusion. It was sudden, controlled fury. His left arm came around her waist, not hesitantly, but with a firm, possessive grip that pulled her tighter against the unyielding strength of his chest. His right hand moved, casually yet deliberately, to rest high on her thigh, the weight and warmth of his palm a clear, territorial claim. He leaned in, his mouth close to her ear, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble that cut through the surrounding chatter and was just loud enough for the man standing 10 feet away to hear every syllable. "You're trembling, Clara? Should I ask who that man is? Or should I just remove him from this event right now?" The words, laced with an authentic, shocking protective edge, sent a wave of shivers through Clara. This was not an act. The CEO's reaction had left her utterly, completely stunned.